Another double today.
Alrighty, what's going on everyone? We're tying up the tubing midge. So I realize that there's probably a million flies out there that are called the tubing midge, allegedly, but this one's the best one. And the reason for that is because it's so versatile. This is typically fished as a midge emerger pattern, but you could also put a tail on it and call it a baetis. So you can swap out colors. I'm going to tie this one in gray. You can fish it in brown, black, pretty much any color. But without further ado, we'll just jump right into it. I'm tying this on a 2488 TMC. Typically tie it in a size 22. You could also tie it in 24. For the materials that we're using, you really don't need to tie this in a 26. You could give it a shot, but to me this is more of a winter fly pattern or even a spring fly pattern. So good time to start filling your boxes up with these. So I'm just going to start that thread a little bit behind the eye and then start wrapping rearward. And sort of like tying a Johnny Flash or maybe like a WD-40. I just want to keep this body nice and thin. This is going to be real simple. This is a great beginner fly pattern, and you know, right around the time when I first started tying midges, this was one of my favorites to whip up. I caught a lot of fish on this. So the secret ingredient obviously is going to be some tubing. I'm using gray. If you're tying this fly in black, you could also use gray. You could use pretty much any color you want. So the idea here with the tubing is it's just adding a little bit of volume to the wing. Typically when we tie emerger patterns, we're just adding in a little bit of flash, but this is going to give it just enough bulk to sort of become a fish attention grabber. So you can see there what I did with the tubing. I went over the top of it, that way it's pointing rearward. And then with this one, I pretty much repeated the same process. Went in front of it, tied over it, that way these are going to lay facing backwards once I go to trim them. From there, I'll just make a couple touching wraps at the head. We're going to put a little dubbing head in here, but not before we put in one of my favorite ingredients that I put into almost half of my fly patterns, some of this UV crystal flash. So I'm just going to wrap that around the thread, and I'm going to pretty much do the exact same thing, except I don't need to necessarily make sure that these are pointing on opposite sides. I just kind of want this to run right in between where the tubing is. If it happens to lay on the sides, just throw it away because the fish aren't going to eat it. Last step here, a little bit of gray dubbing. Very little. Less is more with dubbing. Just going to roll that onto there, slide it up to the eye. And just get a nice little head going. You can go with the darker shade if you want to. I'm using sort of a lighter gray dubbing. And we will finish this off with a couple two-turn whip finishes. I like to really pull that thread back on my forward whip finish to make sure it doesn't crowd the eye. Little scissor trim. The trick to cutting the wing is to just grab it all at once. And ideally what I try to do is lay my scissor about halfway across the hook shank, and then I'll just trim it up from there. So I'll grab all of the wing, lay my scissors down right about there. Perfect. So you can see the tubing is on the lateral sides and the flash is right down the middle. Super buggy, great pattern to fish in the spring months when the water's still a little bit off color. They should start eating this pretty soon here in the winter months. Look for that lake to turn over. We're definitely in winter fishing mode, so if you can't decide if the fish are on junk or if they're eating bigger bugs, this is definitely a good one to go to. And I've had a lot of success on this on other tailwaters as well. So that's all I have for you guys for now. Tie up some of these, have a bunch of different colors in your box, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.